Good evening, citizens and guests, council and staff. It's April 7th and our regular council meeting this evening. City Clerk, roll call, please.
Mayor Cernanek.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Beckman.
Here.
Councilmember Brinkman.
Here.
Councilmember Cole.
Here.
Councilmember Stallman. Councilmember Valdez.
Present. Thank you very much. And Mitchell and Grant, our young scouts this morning, will be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So could you please stand and join us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Mitchell and Grant. With regard to the agenda this evening, with regard agenda item 8A, there will be a second public hearing. So immediately following the public hearing required by the City Charter for Ordinance 22-2015, there will be a second hearing which is required pursuant to Section 147F of the Federal Tax Code for private activity bonds. The second hearing is commonly known as a TEFRA hearing, that's T-E-F-R-A, named after the Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act of 1982, and is part of the necessary process for the note to be issued for the Rocky Mountain Center for the Blind project to be tax exempt. Are there any other agenda items to consider? If not, the agenda will stand as submitted with that one addition, and note that Councilmember Stallman has joined us. Looking for a motion on certification of minutes.
I have two motions. First motion will be for item 4A, ID 1572. I move to approve, based on the clerk's certification, the March 17th video as the minutes for the March 17th, 2015 regular meeting of the City Council.
Second.
Council, we have a motion and a second on the minutes of March 17th. Council ready to vote?
Vote is unanimous. The motion carries.
Okay.
And I have a motion for item 4B, which is ID 15-73, certification of the March 24th, 2015 minutes. I move to approve, based on the clerk's certification, the March 24th video as the minutes for the March 24th, 2015 regular meeting of the City Council.
Second.
Okay, Council, we have a motion and a second on the minutes, certification of the minutes for March 24th. Council ready to vote?
Yep. The vote is unanimous. The motion carries.
Okay, thank you. We now move on to citizen comments. This is unscheduled public appearances are an opportunity for any citizen to express opinions or ask questions regarding city services, council policies, or other matters of community concern that are not part of the scheduled agenda. Generally, an immediate response should not be expected. Typically, issues are referred to city staff for follow-up information or research and reported back to the council and the individual that initiated the comment or inquiry. If any citizen would like to speak during unscheduled public appearances, please complete a green citizen card located on the table at the entrance to the council chambers, and note that unscheduled public appearances are limited to 4 minutes. Please provide the green card to the city clerk or leave it at the podium. Tom, would you like to speak first? And please identify yourself.
May I use this projector?
Okay. Doug, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and fellow citizens. My name is Tom Grushka. I am a legally blind public transit user in Littleton. I'm here tonight to inform the City Council and the citizens about a very important issue. Regarding public transportation here in Littleton. RTD is proposing a drastic fare change structure that is going to disproportionately impact Littleton's transit users, Littleton's transportation costs, and Littleton's input as a city into the regional transportation district. Some brief history. In the Great Recession, RTD increased fares by 29%, and then after that, by the end of the 2012, they had cut services by over $20 million per year. This affected disproportionately low-income, disabled people, especially the Colorado Center for the Blind located here in Littleton, and it's had a direct impact on the city. RTD's proposed fare increase is going to raise RTD fares to the highest in the United States. By eliminating transfers, it's going to effectively require people to buy day passes. My graph here shows that RTD is second only to Seattle of the top 30 transit agencies. The accessoride fare is going up to $5.20 per way, which is going to be cost prohibitive for people with disabilities to have freedom in transportation. The timeline on RTD's proposal, the final public hearings for public comment are tomorrow night, but after that I'm sure public elected officials would have an opportunity to interact with RTD board members to discuss hopefully postponing this decision until more thought can be put into it. This is kind of hard for me to reach. Okay, so RTD's proposed changes are going to affect transit users. It's going to raise prices on working people. It's going to impact disabled people and senior citizens, and especially I know that Littleton is a very senior-friendly and disabled-friendly community, and this would hurt those commuters. The proposal is also going to impact transportation costs. Whenever you have good public transit, it helps the cities because the street maintenance costs fall on the cities, not on RTD. And finally, this proposal is going to affect Littleton's relationship with RTD as a partner and investor in RTD. Littleton has invested significantly, and it's going to affect that relationship. And what my hope out of this is that I can't even do this. My hope is that the city of Littleton can. Do I have 1 minute? Is that what that says?
Yes.
That the city of Littleton can work with RTD as a partner and investor, and hopefully table some of these decisions so that more public comment, because the hearings haven't been widely published enough. And so that the citizens of Littleton and the city council, I think this could be a very positive opportunity because for Littleton to come together, because I know there's a lot of challenges in Littleton right now, but public transit is a pretty universal principle and could help to get the community involved and to have more input into the public process. Thank you for your time. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Tom.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Pam?
Good evening, Council. My name is Pam Chadbourne. I live at the corner of Crestline in Nevada in District 1. And my first comment is that I regret the resignation of Councilmember Stein. We didn't often agree, but I actually, passing out flyers on another issue, mentioned to my neighbor Randy Stein that he run for council. And at that moment, I never would have thought that it would have ended up with a resignation and a recall possibility. And that's a sad thing for a city like Littleton. I'm sorry about it. So I heard about the RTD issue, and I thought I'd bring a couple of articles about it. The Denver Post, March 15th, had an editorial about, the title is RTD Muffs Chance at Hot Transit Option. A company that succeeded in cutting transit times in Boston proposed RTD to do a test run here. And it would cost nothing. Because they've already done this model and they use other sources of data to cut down transit times and then enable, they have apps so that riders can find out which routes are uncongested and can use those routes. but RTD turned it down. And there's a couple of comments in here that I thought are worthwhile and applicable to Littleton. One of them, Sussman is a Denver City Council person, says the city has difficulty connecting people from their homes to the transit system. I'm thinking now whether we should contemplate a Denver transit district to find solutions for the first mile within our city. And I want to emphasize that because I haven't heard that in our discussions of transit-oriented development yet. The only TOD option I've heard proposed is massive density at a quarter mile around a transit station, and that is not the only alternative. So what we can consider and should consider is the last mile, the first mile, getting to the station, away from the station, and you can have medium density for that whole mile. You have a great quality of life, expand a community around the RTD stations. Why isn't that in our plans? I want it to be. Please consider getting that into our discussions. Got to get glasses. And perhaps a citywide transit district could be created as an overlay district to RTD, she said. Pretty radical, but I'm against the RTD proposed changes, specifically the fact that transfers would now not be free, because I use that. And Tom is absolutely right. If you're a senior, if you're disabled, you want to get on that bus, even if it's for 2 or 3 blocks. You need the bus. And getting rid of the free transfer is a big burden on the most disadvantaged people. So I just want to mention that tomorrow night, besides the last RTD hearing downtown, the Littleton hearing occurs. And it's a King Carl Metro District ranch house, so go to the RTD site and look it up. And I guess kind of time's over, so thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Pam. Anyone else this evening? Doug?
Doug Clark, 4th District. For comparison, the light rail charge in Phoenix is $2 all day, anywhere you want to go, as often as you want. On February 17th, 2015, you had on the agenda Resolution 12-2015, which was a resolution to approve a substantial modification to the Santa Fe Urban Renewal Plan. That modification was to add sales tax to the already existing tax increment financing in the plan and to add sales and property tax to the portions of the Santa Fe area that did not already have tax increment financing. During the meeting, Councilman Stein made the motion to approve the resolution, which was seconded by Councilmember Stallman. A short time later, Councilmember Cole asked how she should go about removing the properties or some properties from the Santa Fe plan, and the answer from the city attorney was to amend the main motion to specify the properties to be removed, which she did, and it was seconded. And that motion to amend the main motion passed on a 4-3 vote. Then Councilman Beckman moved to table the amended main motion to a date certain, which was March 17th, and that also passed on a 4-3 vote. So what we have at the meeting was a motion to approve Resolution 12-2015, which was a motion to approve the substantial modification to the Santa Fe Urban Renewal Plan that had been amended to delete 5 properties and tabled till March 17th. However, at the council meeting of March 17th, Resolution 12-2015 was nowhere to be found. It had disappeared. It had been replaced with a completely different resolution, Resolution 21-2015. And that resolution did the exact opposite. It denied the substantial modification. Whereas Resolution 12-2015, which had been moved, amended, and tabled, but disappeared, approved the substantial modification. Somehow, somewhere in the council decided to replace one resolution with a completely different resolution and remove the properties from that without the public knowing how or why that decision had taken place. As I mentioned, Resolution 12, 2015, that had been moved in February, had been amended to remove 5 properties. And those 5 properties weren't in the new resolution that replaced that one. Instead, there was a brand new resolution to remove the properties, but it contained another new property that had never been moved on by the council or voted. This council has a problem with transparency. When the council moves to approve a resolution, amends that resolution, discusses it, and then tables it to a new date, and then it just disappears into thin air. That's a problem. It's a problem that your citizens don't know what's taking place, that the council is obviously making decisions on what's happening in the background out of the view of the public by replacing one motion or one resolution with a completely different resolution. Now, you could have handled this with your procedures. You could have brought it back, which is what you should have done. You could have amended it. You could have accomplished the same thing, but you just completely ignored your own procedures and did who knows what outside of the public view. And I have to say that a council that can't be bothered to follow its own legislative procedures is really a dangerous and non-transparent council. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone? Carol?
I'm Carol Breezak. I live in the 4th District. 2 weeks ago, Chuck Branch, a retail recruiter, addressed the City Council. He proceeded to describe just what he could do for the city of Littleton. In fact, he would be attending an event in Vegas in the near future with the charge to go and find national and regional retailers to come to Littleton. What was also mentioned, although not front and center, was the requirement for the taxpayers of Littleton to subsidize the retailers' move to Littleton. Now, that's a big topic for discussion. What alarmed me most, as much as the idea that our tax dollars were required to subsidize retailers to come to Littleton, was how little discussion there was among council members using tax dollars in this way. It was almost as if there had been a meeting where all this got hashed out and I just missed it. However, in looking for that missed meeting, I discovered that I did not miss a meeting, but I learned that there were indeed meetings. Meetings between the retail recruiters, city manager, and members of the council. Meetings that the public was not invited to attend. Meetings that took place behind closed doors. In order not to violate the Sunshine Law, the meetings were held with only 2 members of council in attendance at one time. I understand that meeting this way is certainly legal, but it does not meet the true intent of the charter change voted into the charter last year regarding secret meetings. When the city manager was quoted as finding a way to work around what the voters had just passed, I guess we should have taken him at his word. But what a disappointment that the council has taken the same attitude. So meetings took place between council members, the city manager, and the retail recruiter, where no doubt issues and concerns were raised and discussed out of the view of the public, questions that citizens would be and are interested in hearing, questions that, if not for your small meetings, would have been asked during your study session, and questions that the citizens would now have answers to. We would have the benefit of understanding your individual concerns regarding the recruitment of national, regional, and local retailers into Littleton with the promise of our tax dollars. In fact, we might know how much of our tax dollars you intend to spend subsidizing retailers. I wonder what other small group meetings are taking place where the public's business is being discussed, but in order not to have the public discussion, you are meeting in twos outside of regular council meetings. So much for open and transparent government. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Betty?
My name is Betty Harris. I live in District 2. I'd like to read this letter into the record, please. Dear City Council members, on March 3rd, 2015, the citizens of Littleton amended the Littleton City Charter to add Section 64.5, which states, any council action approving or modifying an urban renewal plan pursuant to Part 1 of the Colorado Urban Renewal Law must be ratified, that means voted, on by the registered electors of the City of Littleton if the approval or modification of the urban renewal plan proposes the use of or change to eminent domain, condemnation, tax increment financing, revenue sharing, or cost sharing. Section 64.5 says any council action approving or modifying a plan must be ratified if the approval or modification proposes a change to tax increment financing. The plain language and the intent of the section is not limited to only substantial modifications, and it's not limited only to changes to tax increment financing which affect the 25-year clock for TIF. Rather, the intent and plain language require ratification of any changes to the plan which affect in any way tax increment financing. On March 17, 2015, the Littleton City Council passed a resolution which modified the Santa Fe Urban Renewal Plan to remove parcel 2077-32-3-017, which is located in unincorporated Arapahoe County. Since this parcel is located in the Santa Fe Urban Renewal Plan, Area TIF Number 1, as described in Appendix C of the plan, the modification is a change to tax increment financing because it removes property from the tax increment financing area. We remind the Council that you were notified by Arapahoe County before the November 4th, 2014 public hearing on the Santa Fe Urban Renewal Plan that the plan included property located outside the city limits in unincorporated Arapahoe County, and that the city had not complied with legal requirements for including that land in the Santa Fe Urban Renewal Plan. This problem was also brought to your attention by public testimony during that public hearing. Each of you took an oath to support the charter. We ask you to fulfill your oath and comply with the requirements of the City Charter Section 64.5 by scheduling an election for voters to ratify your modification of the Santa Fe Urban Renewal Plan. Signed, Betty Harris, Carol Brejak, Frank Atwood, Jose Trujillo, and Paul Bingham. In the future, when the city decides to blight property in city limits, it will be advisable to consult people who know how to identify property rather than an overzealous city manager or an uninformed paid consultant. In my opinion, the Santa Fe plan is currently invalid because the council illegally included it in the plan. Jim Rees admitted on March 17th that the unincorporated land included in the plan did not meet the legal requirements for inclusion in the plan. What you have is an invalid plan. The modification you approved to remove the land is not effective until it's ratified by the voters, which means that the Santa Fe plan is currently invalid. It is illegal. Thank you.
Anyone else? Joe?
Joseph M. Trujillo, 5574 South Huron Street, District 2. And this evening I'm here to talk to you a little bit about our railroad depression and the derailments that have taken place in one in Canada, one's in eastern United States, with tremendous amount of damage to the cities. What I would like to know is whether or not we have our emergency procedures set up to take care of things in case we get a derailment within the railroad depression. We've had two. presently, at the time, the first two that we've had, we're pretty lucky. We had one was coal and one was sulfur. But what I read about the Balkan oil fields, oil that's coming out of there, is very explosive, and it does a lot of damage. And we're right here in downtown Littleton, just as all of the people along the rail are. So I got to thinking about what have we done to alert our citizens if, in fact, we do have another derailment of this nature, and especially with Balkan oil. We have I am still with the cemetery board, and at the last two derailments, the damaged cars that were taken out of there were placed on cemetery land, which the cemetery was glad to allow. If we had not, this would have been taken, all of these cars would have had to been taken out onto Santa Fe. You can see the mess that we have there. It would just stop everything. So I think, if we could get a pamphlet from our fire department or those that are responsible as first responders, so that people know exactly what is your option here. Because I've seen the pictures on these other ones, and they've just wiped out cities down near the railroad stations, and I think that it's very important that we get some literature out that will tell us, hey, head for Colorado Springs or something. It doesn't matter. That's what we were supposed to do when they dropped the bomb here in the 50s, head for Castle Rock. Now, what the hell are we going to do at Castle Rock? They didn't have enough water to serve their citizens. So that's what my main concern is, and I'm hoping that we can have some pamphlets made up by the fire department and those that are involved, and just so we have an idea of what we're going to do here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone else? Linda?
I first of all echo Mr. Grishka's sentiments regarding RTD. On October 28, 2014, Arapahoe County sent you a letter regarding the Santa Fe Urban Renewal Plan and objected to the inclusion of the City of Inglewood property in the Santa Fe Plan. So the county said that because this particular property is in an unincorporated Arapahoe County, it triggers Section 31-25-112.5, which requires approvals from the county and requires very specific actions to be able to include this property in an urban renewal plan. So you heard this from not only the county but citizens like me. In short, you should have known that including this property in an urban renewal plan triggers these requirements. But the law was not followed, and you did not obtain approval from the county to include the property in your urban renewal area. So you should have never approved the Santa Fe Urban Renewal Plan that illegally included properties. So what did you do? 4 months after the plan was approved on November 2nd, 2015, someone finally woke up and decided to exclude the property from the Urban Renewal Plan. It came up at the March 17, 2015 meeting out of the blue and was approved without any council discussion or collaboration with the LIFT board. The LIFT board should have at least known about it, and since they're responsible for administering the plan. Again, urban renewal is for 25 years, and these legal descriptions should be reviewed with a fine-tooth comb, and the laws should be followed. Not to mention there's still other properties included in the Santa Fe Urban Renewal Plan that do not exist in the county's database or are incorrectly referenced in the Urban Renewal Plan. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you. We'll now move down to comments and reports. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Manager's minute for this evening. Number one, Thursday, the executive team will have a retreat entitled Present to the Future. We've invited internationally recognized leadership expert Patrick Ibarra who will share practical strategies to move Littleton forward. He's worked with the cities of Denver, Fort Collins, Arvada, Boulder, among many others here in Colorado. Last week was very busy for Littleton Fire Rescue, as I believe Council is aware, who responded to 2 partner fires. Even though they were in close proximity to one another, there is nothing to indicate they are connected. The investigation into the first fire concluded that it was an accidental fire and caused by maintenance personnel working on the plumbing, and we're still looking into the second fire. Number 3, the Fire Prevention Unit has dedicated Tuesdays and Wednesdays, not from 9 to 11 a.m. to assist contractors with plan review on small projects, part of our one-stop shop improvements. Tim Cox has hit the ground running in the Fire Prevention Bureau and has caught up on all school inspections and code violation follow-ups in the 3 school districts LFR serves, and we're now starting private school inspections. Number 5, tenant finish is coming along nicely at Lucky Finn's Grill. That's the old Opus restaurant, so we hope to see them open before too long. Staff met with the owner and site manager, who said the city staff is the best they've ever worked with. Economic development staff hosted a lunch for 26 developers, asset managers, and commercial real estate reps. We had a couple council members attend that with us as well. We have new signs that have been erected at 19 locations on the boundaries of the city limits. They're consistent, representing the city's new brand, and let motorists know that they've arrived in Littleton. The old signs were various sizes, shapes, and colors. The new ones are mounted on breakaway poles, which are a significant improvement in safety enhancement. Number 8, funds are available to help improve accessibility, mobility, or safety for income-qualified residents or individuals with a disability due to a partnership between the City of Littleton, Arapahoe County, and Brothers Redevelopment. You can visit brothersredevelopment.org. That's one word, brothersredevelopment.org, for more information. Community Development received a grant from the Colorado State Historical Fund to produce design guidelines for the Louthan Street Historic District. Permits have been issued and works underway on the Pint Room in the former Celtic Tavern space. It's a gourmet burger bar, and because we don't have enough beers on tap, we're going to add 175 American craft beers on tap, opening late April, early May. Communications Department won 3 awards from the National Association of Government Communicators, and I don't know where's Kelly. Can we get some more detail out to council on those? Thanks. They're great awards. Next Thursday, the 16th, the public is invited to an open house to provide input on the master plan for Reynolds Landing. It will be at the Carson Nature Center from 6 to 7 p.m. That's next Thursday, the 16th, from 6 to 7. The downtown signage overview is complete. Bid documents should be going out soon. And the Littleton Police Department, I think Councilman Beckman's aware of this, was awarded reaccreditation by CALEA. This process takes place every 3 years. The LPD meets 382 professional standards based on national best practices. LPD is one of only 16 law enforcement agencies in the state of Colorado to earn this impressive recognition. And last but not least, tomorrow at 5 p.m. is the deadline for applications to fill in the District 1 vacancy. Interviews will be held on April 14th and an appointment made by the City Council on April 21st. And I'll ask City Attorney Kirsten to speak on that. Sorry, Kristen. Oh, dear Lord. Yikes.
Sure. Some of the legal requirements are that the charter requires that the council must choose someone by majority vote to fill that District 1 vacancy within 30 days. And the person will then serve until the general municipal election in November of this year, at which time the District 1 voters will choose a successor who will serve for the remainder of the term, which runs through November 2017. The charter requires that anyone who's interested in being considered for the position must be a U.S. citizen, be at least 21 years of age, have been a qualified elector of the city for the past year, and be a resident of District 1.
Anything else, City Manager?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Cole.
Well, lots on my mind right now. We had several citizens speak on some critical issues. The city attorney just referred to the charter, and I'm a bit perplexed here about what I'm doing. But I think in good faith with the citizens, I'd like to make a motion at this point.
This is for reports.
I know, but at what point tonight then can I make a motion that's not on the agenda?
We have a general business segment at item 9 on the agenda.
Okay, I will do that there. So I had an interesting, exciting, informative experience over the weekend. I participated in the community emergency response team training exercise. So I got to be a victim for the people who have just been completed their, well, it was their training, final training exercise. They actually had two, to see if they could apply everything they learned during that training. And I want to thank all the people who took the training. If people have not taken it, I encourage you to. And all the victims. And we were decked out in makeup. It showed that bones were coming out of here and there and blood all over the place and whatever. And so when we all finished and I was waiting for my husband to pick me up, I hadn't removed this stuff that was coming out of my head, and some woman nearly had heart failure, I think. So this is really, realistic stuff. One person was impaled with a board and so forth. But we rely on our citizen volunteers for things like that, and to be supportive if we have emergencies, and rely on citizens to volunteer for things like that so people can get their experience. So really super, and I want to thank everybody. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Stallman?
No report tonight, but a request, I guess, to the city manager. On behalf of our good friends at the Colorado Center for the Blind and other folks with developmental disabilities, would you, if you have the opportunity, share some of the presentation information with the folks at RTD and convey some concerns about what they're intending to do?
Most certainly.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Valdez?
Yes, last night I attended the museum board meeting, and a couple things. One, they are getting ready to kick off their summer concert series on June 3rd with Tim Stiles. Then they'll have several concerts, and they're usually on Thursday night beginning at 7 p.m. That's free to the public, of course. Also, the exhibit, Littleton Goes to War, closes August 16. If you haven't had a chance to see it, please get out there and see it. It is really, really good to see. It shows the role that Littleton had played during World War II with companies such as the Coleman Motor Company of Littleton, supplies that were made in Littleton, including ammunition, and the most important commodity, of course, were our people that served during the war as well as at home. There was recently a national speaker who gives speeches about World War II all around the country, as well as taking folks to Normandy. And when he saw our exhibit here in Littleton, he had mentioned that it was one of the finest he has seen, especially for the size of our museum as well as the budget. Also, during our meeting last night, Bill Hastings, the curator of the museum over there, he gave a little speech on what goes into an exhibit, whether it's the World War II exhibit or any exhibit. And for instance, that the planning begins months before the exhibit is actually open to the public for display. And it involves everything from conceptual concepts. Those concepts go to our folks that we have a shop over there. It's a really big shop. It's pretty cool. Anyway, they have to design displays and figure out how they're going to make it happen. Then there's another group of folks that figure out how they're going to arrange the gallery, including putting together a small-scale model of the gallery so they can figure things out. It's a lot of stuff that you would do in business that I just never thought that went into these exhibits, not to mention all the hours that go into the research. It isn't like they just open up some book or call somebody up and say, hey, can you bring in this exhibit and set it up for us? They do that work. And Littleton is so fortunate to have that museum as well as the folks that put it all together, as well as all the items that are detailed, cataloged, where they go to and where they came from and where they go back to. But I recommend that folks get out, go see the Littleton Goes to War.
A lot of the items that are in the exhibit in the gallery are either belong to or came from people who live in Littleton. So get out and see it. They're going to have another exhibit coming up here sometime later this year that's going to have to do with the big flood that we had many years ago. And a lot of folks will remember that flood, but that'll be coming up later on in the year, I believe. So,
thank you. Councilmember Brinkman.
I do have a report. I wanted to report back to council that the budget that we did for the 2015 budget, one of the appropriations or line items that council approved was to put a branch of the Bemis Library at Aspen Grove. And a couple of things regarding that, we were pretty specific that we wanted to make certain that we weren't going to put it in a place where we would have to quickly move it around. That wasn't a feasibility for us. And also that we didn't want to put it in a place where we would, it would be something that the center would not be able to lease for active retail use. The location that we're looking at sort of became unfeasible in terms of some of the requirements regarding entrance and exit and ADA. So the construction numbers on that grew. Somewhat serendipitously, I guess, is to our great fortune that Tattered Cover has relocated into Aspen Grove from Highlands Ranch, and as such would have created a conflict for a library there based on the retail agreements that DDR has with their tenants. So the money that we earmarked for that will be removed from that earmark and go back into, I guess, stay in the general fund. But so wanted to give you guys an update on that, and also to let you know that that Tattered Cover is opened on Saturday, and hearing rave reviews and massive crowds in there. So it's excellent to have that iconic bookstore in our community. Wanted to also let give staff a big kudos on that. This was a very quick, very urgent move. It was something that required a lot of expediency on behalf of our permitting and I want to say examining. It's not that. It's, I lost a noun.
Inspection. The inspection?
Inspections, thank you. Inspections work. We were in competition with other retail centers, and between the combination of the group at DDR and the city staff working cohesively together, we were able to secure this and get them open on the day that they wanted to open expeditiously. So they are in the process of putting in a coffee shop now. So that is a big plus for all of us. I also wanted to mention this with having the Scouts here. The Scouts do an awful lot of work in our community that I don't know that they're always recognized for, but one of the places where they tend to really have a huge impact is in South Platte Park. And there is a walking bridge in South Platte Park that was incredibly damaged and had large gaps in it. It was very difficult, particularly with a dog, to get across it safely. And this weekend, I don't know which scout troop it was, but one of the local scout troops went in and spent an entire Saturday replaced that whole bridge, and made that whole area a lot safer and a lot cleaner for the community to use. And that actually kind of coincided with the opening of the northern wildlife area, which, based on the river restoration work that we've been doing in there, we've been able to now open up that amenity to the community again. It's been closed for a couple of years for safety issues, but that was because of river damage due to seepage under the bank and making sinkholes, and that's now been restored. There's still a lot of restoration going on in there, but it is now accessible. And along the same lines of the river talk, just to double down on what Michael mentioned on the river Reynolds Landing, this is an important open house for the community to come down. We're talking in the neighborhood of about $4 million worth of improvements that we're looking at doing in that particular area. It is upland improvements, it's trail enhancements, it's river enhancements, there's a lake over there, and we're looking at creating some enhancements in that lake, some connectability, or connectivity, and some experiential activities over there. So this is really important to get the community's input. April 16th, 6 to 7 at Carson Nature Center for the community's input. And then Riverside Downs, as we've talked about a number of times, it approved the expenditures on that. Fortunately, the expenditures have come in under budget, which is great, and they will actually start work on that next week. So construction will begin. Hopefully the grand opening will coincide with the new restaurant and bar that will be opening there. We expect to be completed with that work mid-June, and if the weather cooperates and things go a little faster, it could be early June. So that is very exciting. We do not expect to have the trail disrupted for any long periods of time. It may be a day or two where there'll be detours, but that'll be well posted. And then just real briefly, I wanted to, because of Mr. Trujillo's comments regarding the train and the train derailments, I was appointed by the governor to the Colorado Emergency Planning Commission. That commission is dealing almost exclusively at this point with the railroads and hazardous materials and derailments. It is a statewide concern. And as you noted, it's also a national concern. But on a statewide level, the commission is working very aggressively with the railroads to work on early notification and the types of issues you were talking about. Littleton Fire Rescue does have representatives within that group, and Colorado Municipal League has also joined in on that, and Mark Radke is leading some efforts within the Colorado Municipal League, getting first responders and to workshops and stuff working on this. So we're hitting it from a number of prongs throughout the state, and the effort is very, very concentrated, working with the railroads on these hazardous materials and the derailments we've seen, even in our state. In the Evans area, just had 2 recently. So just so you have that information. And that's it.
Thank you for mentioning the rail elements, Deb. So, Mayor Pro Tem Beckman.
Since the topic of RTD has come up, just a little bit of an update. Some good news and some bad news, I guess, is the way we can view it. On March 19th, there was a meeting with RTD and three of their 12 commissioners for jurisdictions and entities and interested special districts in the area of the Highlands Ranch in the Southwest Extension. And at that meeting, we received a briefing from RTD about their master plan for the entire area and what progress is being made on those. And then finally at the end, we kind of zeroed in on the Southwest Extension, which is what this is now called in all the documents for RTD. The circumstance that I asked about was everything that they're doing in improving the district is really related to the vote of the people of Colorado who are within the RTD district to approve fast tracks back in 2004. And as you recall, at that time there was a map that was proposed for those of us that were voting on that to say this is what would be the hope that the approval of the fast tracks tax would result in. Well, the one thing it hasn't resulted in is an extension of the Southwest corridor any further south. And so, of course, for myself and for the mayor who were attending, that really was a major issue. Now, what has been done is in 2010, they completed the environmental assessment of the area of the Southwest Extension, which would go to the other side of County Line Road and the other side of 470, and then curve around and eventually end up around Lucent in Highlands Ranch. They also purchased additional light rail cars that they felt would be, in that purchase, be enough to also cover an additional use in the corridor. And they overbuilt in order to manage a potential light rail, some of the grading at Lucent, and did a little bit of access and cost estimates. But that's it. So at this point, the information from the RTD board was that although fast tracks will expire in 2016, it was approved in 2014, there are no plans for the southwest extension to actually take any ridership any further south. And it matters to Littleton because, as you know, we've got 1,200 spaces down there at Mineral, and what would happen with those would be a different circumstance if light rail went further south and the terminus was in Highlands Ranch. I imagine one could sit out there and see how many Highlands Ranch cars come to light rail at Mineral, and that would move them further south and perhaps do better for those folks that live within a quarter mile or the last mile of the light rail station. But these are the kind of challenges that we're dealing with. And then I want to compliment also the mayor because after that topic, I broached that topic, and then he followed it up to say that really if we're talking strategically, that southwest extension needs to curve all the way around back over to Lone Tree and then hook up with the southeast extension there, which has just been completed, and really deal with what could happen along Highlands Ranch and that area and have some purpose for them. And of course the Douglas County commissioners agreed with that fully, and so did most of the people who were present that are affected by those kinds of things. But as much as we agreed with it and as much as we are interested in it, it doesn't look like that any time in the near future there'll be any further RTD into Douglas County.
Thank you. Thank you, Bruce. A few items to mention and to first talk about what Tom mentioned relative to the RTD fare study. For those folks that are able to make the public hearing tomorrow, that's all fine and good. My understanding is RTD is still taking written comments, so that if folks are not able to make the public hearing, those can be brought forward as well. And with that, it certainly is an element of discussion because it is some change over where it's at, and it does impact the potential for elasticity in the market. So it's been a big study. My recollection on the March 17th meeting is we actually took a two-step process with regard 12-2015, and we actually rejected that and moved on to the second piece. But I'll ask for a follow-through on that relative to Doug's comment. And to get to the first mile, last mile, that earlier today I was with the Sustainable Communities Initiative Consortium meeting for its last official time as that study and work has come to a stage that it now moves towards implementation. The first and the last mile are certainly and have been a lot of the discussion, both at the Dr. Cog level and across the metro region, in dealing with transit and how do we move forward with all of that. And so would encourage folks, if they have an interest in that area, to look at the Sustainable Communities Initiative report and the various I believe there have been 5 projects that have been executed in conjunction with the West Line and the Gold Line, and to take a look at that. It ends up being a little complicated as folks are looking at some of the housing because as particularly as occurred in the Lakewood community, Mayor Bob Murphy would indicate that there's been a stunted building activity with regard residential housing along that line, and leads me to the Senate Bill 177, which is modifying the construction defects statutes. It's moving through the Senate, and hopefully we'll move on for House consideration. So that is moving forward. The Dr. Cog Board continues to move forward with Metro Vision 2040, which is looking out over the next 25 years, and in conjunction with the Sustainable Communities Initiative, there have been a couple of tools, one in which the city is employing, which is the Boomer Bond Survey, which is to give us an idea of how we're doing and needs with regard our population as we all age. I'm part of that group. And then also another tool that's available through the DRCOG website is a regional atlas that allows for some what-if analysis for those folks that are so inclined. Which leads me to the next step is a reminder that tomorrow at Bemis from 2 to 3 in the afternoon, our Aging Well Resource Center is actually having a senior living options discussion and presentation on that. And for those folks that are interested in helping the scouts out at times, the big day this year, a volunteer day coordination, it's not the only time that they're looking for volunteers, but it is April 25th. So if you're looking for trying to figure out how you get involved, if you're not on Meetup, let me know. I can help you get there on that front. So thank you very much. Okay. That moves us to the consent agenda items, item 7 on our agenda. The consent agenda items can be adopted by a single motion. All ordinances must be read by title prior to a vote on the motion. Any consent agenda item may be removed at the request of a council member. First off is consent agenda item 7A. It's ordinance 09-2015. This is an ordinance on first reading repealing Chapter 9 of Title 8, which is cable television franchise, and repealing and reenacting Chapter 10 of Title 8, cable customer service standards of the City Code of the City of Littleton. Consent agenda item 7B is a resolution. It's a resolution authorizing the negotiated sale of a City of Littleton, Colorado refunding development revenue note for the Rocky Mountain Center for the Blind project. It's Series 2015. It's in a principal amount not to exceed $1.9 million, ratifying the action heretofore taken and providing other matters relating thereto. Consent agenda item 7C is resolution 26-2015, which is a resolution authorizing an intergovernmental agreement regarding a traffic study of Platte Canyon Road with the town of Columbine Valley and Arapahoe County. Consent agenda item 7D is resolution 20-2015, which is a resolution authorizing a memorandum of understanding between the City of Littleton and Ralston House. This is for child victims. And then consent agenda item 7E is ordinance 24-2015, which is an ordinance on first reading amending the city code concerning temporary outdoor display of merchandise in CA and B2 zones to increase the number of days each month when outdoor displays of merchandise shall be allowed.
I would like to pull that.
Okay, so consent agenda item 7E is pulled. Looking for a motion with regard to consent agenda items 7A through 7D.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Council, we have a motion and a second regarding consent agenda item. Council ready to vote?
Vote is unanimous. The vote is unanimous. The motion is approved.
Okay. And Mayor Pro Tem Beckman with regard to 7E.
Yeah, I pulled 7E, and I ultimately am going to ask for us to table it. My reason for pulling it was this is still probably not exactly where we want it to be. I think there needs to be some more discussion with the downtown merchants and with city staff can certainly pass the information on, but now also I attend, and so did the District 1 council member attend the downtown merchants meetings as well as other merchant meetings. In the communication, it mentioned that one of the business owners had requested to change it to 8, and that certainly sounds better than the way that it is. But in talking with that person again, I've talked twice with him, really what we need to do is probably talk about the totality of the situation, because it's not just the number of days, but perhaps a few common sense rules about the sidewalk might be included, and that a common sense approach to this would be to meet as a group and just try to come up with a better solution rather than have it come from the dais with a change in numbers. So based on that, I want to make a motion to table indefinitely, and that's for item 7E.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay. Council, we have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Well, I guess the staff memo suggested that part of this had to do with increasing the number of days in deference to the summer sales season. I guess, do we believe we can and or have the bandwidth to sort this out and still get something done for folks with respect to the summer season when there are more people outside, so forth and so on? I don't know, I guess to you as much as anything else.
You know, in my discussion, I've had a couple discussions with folks. The problem is in saying, perhaps this is the example here that it's in our communication, if we say 8 days per month, well, you know, some would say, well, that gives them 4 weekends. Well, weekends may not be the time when the desirability of that visibility wants. It might be a Thursday or a Friday in anticipation of a weekend. It really just depends on that merchant. And then when you look at it and say, well, you know, that would give them 2 days a week. Well, really it doesn't, because if you've ever done payroll, it's 4.3. You know, so that number just doesn't fit necessarily. And that was my concern, is the council would come up with a number that didn't fit. And I'm not sure that any of us has the business experience of the number that does fit. The one thing, and to answer that just a little deeper, the one thing we don't want is downtown to look trashy and scattered with all kinds of items on the sidewalk. But you know what? Neither do the business people. The business people don't want that either. And so somewhere there can be a discussion there to kind of deal with the presence of the items as well as the number of days. And that's why I wanted to table it, because I didn't think we could reach that up here.
Yeah, I agree with tabling this thing and changing it. I'd like to change it, remove days entirely. Bottom line is, we're not enforcing it in the first place. We haven't ever enforced a similar type of thing, is my understanding. So I would like to talk about this at another time, because I have talked to the individual that you had mentioned also more than once. I've talked to some other individuals down there, and there's a whole array of what folks would like to see down there. I'm down there often, walking around the sidewalks and stuff like that, and some stores can utilize this type of an ordinance or sidewalk displays, and others just have no interest or no need to. But I think if we take away this tool for a merchant that may need this because there's a rush on a certain item, like you and I had a discussion the other day when Beanie Babies, is that what it was? That was a hot item for a short time, but merchants have to jump right on those things, whatever that.
Are you sure it wasn't Pet Rocks?
It may have been a pet rock as well. But the bottom line is when these things become hot, they're only hot for a very short window, and these merchants, you know, they're the ones that they need to sell right away. And if they have to go through a permit system, I think it really encumbers them. So I'm okay with tabling this or doing away with it for now.
Deb?
Well, I think if this is not something that is going to be embraced by the merchants, then of course we need to table it, because we don't need to have another issue with that. But honestly, if we don't sit down and have a conversation with these guys and talk about what we need to talk about and get some of this stuff ironed out, including this, just moving this off of our calendar isn't solving anything. So I would strongly encourage us to request that staff get one of our breakfast meetings or some such thing together with all of those in the downtown merchants, whether they're a member of a hoodlum or not, but anybody that this would apply to or other things, and let's have a conversation, whatever that would look like. But I think that I have heard from a number of them that that's what they're asking for, and I think that we are here to listen and to problem solve and to work with these guys on how we move forward with this. And like you said, we're getting into the summer season, we're getting into the event season, and so at the very least we need to open up a strong and constructive dialogue.
Peggy?
So clarify for me, this is increasing. They're not happy with what we now have. I'm assuming it's not possible to amend this motion for first reading to essentially repeal the restrictions we now have?
If I may, Mayor, remember, so this is enabling legislation. Absent this ordinance, it's not legal to put anything in the public right-of-way. And so we're going to a situation where people are going to put stuff on the right-of-way in violation of the use of the public right-of-way. This allows people to use the right-of-way currently on the books, 3 days a month, increased it based on conversations to 8. So kicking this down the road we'll leave it back at 3 for the duration.
So if I'm hearing the intent of council to increase, well, in a sense, to try to accommodate more, if we don't pass this on first and second reading, they're constrained more than they want to be.
Correct.
So we potentially could pass this on first and second reading and move forward with the suggestion to have the dialogue to be more accommodating.
Correct.
Which seems to me to the benefit of the merchants if we do that. And I appreciate what you all are saying, but it would seem to me giving them more in the meantime is better than holding them tighter now.
I'd be in favor of removing the days altogether. If we're going to move forward with this particular one, we can remove 8 days, can we not?
Well, the premise of the ordinance is that there is a limit on the number of days. I guess you could say that you just need to need to meet the conditions of the ordinance, and the number of days that you have are 365.
And the permit system's still in place, insurance requirement, and that's really the key thing is, is it obstructing the sidewalk, and is there also some liability issue covered? Yep. That is the biggest thing. I would rather just remove days altogether.
Okay.
So I would suggest, I had started putting down a study session because I think there's a conversation that the council needs to have around the use of the public right-of-way and what your overall philosophy is. And then there's some type of conversation with the business owners about how you take that philosophy of the council and merge it with the needs of the downtown businesses. And remember, and we put this in the memo, we are about to undertake a downtown streetscape plan, which is really the long-term conversation about what do we want to look, the feel, the aesthetics, the appeal, pedestrian, traffic, vehicular solution for the downtown, which will really be more the long-term solution. And that Councilman Valdez has his little packet to read, and as soon as we get that back, we'll get that person underway, and we're going to start with the downtown. And they're going, this is, if council recalls, takes us all the way from Broadway to Santa Fe along Littleton Boulevard and Main Street.
And in council, we have a motion on the table at this point in time. My position is that from subsequent discussions, or at least information that we have, is that this first reading amendment is not going to do the trick, and we're putting that aside, and in conjunction with possible streetscape discussion or otherwise having some discussion to try and find something that will at least be possibly an interim for this year, or at least open that dialogue that we would have. And so the motion on the table will basically take what we know, or at least the information we have in front of us now, is that this doesn't work. And so basically to do an indefinite tabling of that, and then looking for a process through study sessions or other dialogue to bring forward something that will do the trick and have those discussions. So further discussion, council? Councilmember Beckman?
I agree with most everything that was said, and I don't want to limit the ability for us to move forward with solving the issue of numbers at a second reading. And by tabling it, we basically are kicking it down the road in essence, with the existing number of 3. And I feel the sentiment may be here to not continue the 3 and then still to move it down the road then for discussion for what's a complete response. So that's just a little more discussion on the tabling issue. I think if we were to vote not to table it, but then entertain a motion to get to that next point we're trying to get to, that might get us further down the road. So rather than withdraw the motion, I can either withdraw the motion or we can vote on it. I'm not sure the procedure.
Okay with withdrawing it.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
I will make a motion.
And you were the second.
Yes.
So based on that, I'd like to withdraw my motion.
Okay, so we've withdrawn the motion, so we have no motion on the table at this point in time.
I do want to make an amendment, a motion.
You have to make a motion.
You have to make a motion.
I'm going to make a motion right now, if I may.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to remove Section 1, Paragraph 3C, and what that is, it says, dates of displays, the owner/applicant shall be limited to 8 days each month when outdoor displays of merchandise shall be allowed. Let's see, the dates of the displays for the permit year shall be submitted with the permit application. I'd like to strike that paragraph C and go forward with the rest of it. I'm okay. I'm not comfortable with just saying, okay, we're changing it from 3 to 8 days. I'd rather just take that out, and if we're going to have further discussion somewhere down the road, I think that would be good. But I don't want to leave a limited days in there right now. I do want to leave in there the permit, though. The permit and the insurance required, because you verify insurance certificates. Right. Correct. Cool. That's what I would like. And it's not being enforced anyway. And I would like to see it be enforced. If we're going to have something, let's at least enforce it.
It has been enforced since council approved this ordinance originally. It was historically it hadn't been enforced. That's why I'm concerned about going backwards, because we're cognizant and we're aware of the potential liability and trip hazards and impact to pedestrian access. So we're there, Councilman Valdez.
Great. So anyway, my motion is to strike Section 1, 3C.
So just to clarify, the motion would actually be to approve this on first reading and asking us to bring back on second reading a revised ordinance that strikes Section 3C, the one you just referred to. We still need to schedule a public...
I believe it's Section 1, not Section 3.
Just to clarify, it's Section 3C of the municipal code.
Of the ordinance is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Section
1, 3C.
3C of the ordinance.
Of the proposed ordinance.
Right. Section 1 is amending a provision of the city code that's Section 3C.
Okay.
But I think I understand the intent that you'd want the ordinance revised to bring back so that there isn't a limited number of days that the permit is in effect.
That's my desire.
And then we still need to schedule then a public hearing, and we can move forward with the original public hearing date that was proposed by staff, which would be April 21st, and we'll bring back the revised ordinance for a second hearing at that time.
Okay. Which removes the days. That's the amendment.
Correct.
Go. So then it still is on the calendar for the next item.
2 weeks.
Yeah, okay.
Second reading. Okay.
And my comment is when looking for the second reading to occur, but the direction would be it talks about the number of days in conjunction with the permit submitted, and that indeed there still is a permit that would be submitted in the process.
Correct. We'll revise the ordinance that the permit's required, but it doesn't limit the days to either 3 or 8 or any amount of days.
Okay. Council, additional discussion or questions? We have a motion and a second to have for the first reading regarding the city code concerning temporary outdoor display of merchandise, and that it will remove Section 3C. There may be some modification on this between this first reading and the second reading. The second reading would occur on April 21st. Any questions? Okay, motion's on the table. Council ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor. The motion carries.
Thank you, Council. Next up, we have an ordinance for second reading and public hearing, item 8A. This is an ordinance on second reading authorizing the issuance of the City of Littleton, Colorado refunding development revenue note for the Rocky Mountain Center for the Blind Project, Series 2015, in a principal amount not to exceed $1.9 million to refinance certain facilities that provide education for blind students and training and related housing facilities, authorizing the execution and delivery by the city of a financing agreement, a note, and closing documents in connection therewith, making determinations as to the sufficiency of revenues and as to other matters related to the refunding project, ratifying action heretofore taken and relating to such bond, and providing other matters relating thereto. Director Farman.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening. The city has enjoyed a partnership with the Rocky Mountain Center for the Blind since the center moved here in 2000. In 2012, the school purchased an apartment complex on Laurel Boulevard that serves as its primary residential facility. And the center now serves over 200 Littleton citizens and over 500 blind adults over the country each year. The school's senior program has grown dramatically in the last couple of years, and they especially enjoy working with the City of Littleton and its police and fire departments, as well as the Littleton merchants. The proposed ordinance this evening is related to a request that comes from the center that the city serve as a conduit issuer of a private placement with First Bank for the refunding of a revenue note, which would refinance a 2008 bond and also a 2012 loan in approximately $1.9 million in total. This would save the center approximately $161,000, or about 9% in net present value savings. Just to clarify, the debt issuance does not constitute a debt or liability obligation of the city, and the sole borrower is the Center for the Blind. Any questions from council, we'll be able to answer those, and we have representatives from the Center of the Blind here as well.
Questions from council?
I do. Cover that it is not a debt.
That's correct. Not a debt at all to the city. And that's stated clearly in the ordinance as well.
That's on the part of the city. Any other questions? Councilmember Stallman?
We don't have the George Baum report and understand there's no exposure other than the name in terms of us acting as a conduit, and we do this for other stuff. But have you seen the Baum report on their ability to repay?
I've seen the summary findings from that report. They looked at the last few years of financial statements, and they are very comfortable with the center's ability to repay the notes in a timely fashion, and they've looked at the ongoing revenue streams from the center and feel very comfortable that they'll be able to meet those.
And those are mainly tuition payments, I assume, from people that are coming there to use the facilities?
Yes.
So there's obviously pretty high likelihood that'll continue, assuming the center continues?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
And at worst, the debt is secured by the property as well.
That's correct.
So, right. Okay. Any additional questions? Okay. This is a second reading, so we have a public hearing. I open the public hearing at 7:49 p.m. Regarding Ordinance 22-15. There are no names on the roster. Does anyone choose to step forward and speak?
Just a correction, 22-2015.
22-2015. Thank you. Tom?
Yes, I would just like to say a few words in support of the Colorado Center for the Blind. As a legally blind person, I'm not a member of the Center for the Blind. However, I know they do a lot for education of blind people and helping them to integrate into the community, to get involved with business, and this is very important. One of the many things that they do to train blind people is orientation and mobility. If any of you have heard of that, that involves training for blind people to use public transportation, to cross streets safely, and to be independent. And they do many, many of these functions, and they've been a vibrant member of this community and have a worldwide reputation for being one of the best, if not the best, training center for the blind. So I just wanted to express my support for them and urge the city to stand with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Anyone else choosing to speak? Joe?
Joseph Trujillo, 5574 South Huron Street. You did have the director of the facility here. Now, if I came in here tonight and on consent agenda 7B, you passed by consent agenda that resolution authorizing the renegotiated sales of the Mountain Center for the Blind. I'm comfortable with that, but I think the reason they left is they might have thought that was the end of the thing. Then you go into 8A, which is in the ordinance, and I think that they might have just got it, mixed up a little.
Quite possibly that's true, Joe. We did have Julie speak on first reading.
Oh, you did? Okay, thank you. Well, I certainly approve of this. I think those people up there are doing a great thing up at the Blind Center. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone else? Okay, closing the public hearing at 7:51 p.m. Council, any additional discussion or looking for a motion?
I move to approve on second reading the ordinance authorizing the issuance of the City of Littleton, Colorado Refunding Development Revenue Note, Rocky Mountain Center for the Blind Project, Series 2015, in a principal amount not to exceed $1,900,000 to refinance certain facilities that provide education for blind students and training and related housing facilities, authorizing the execution and delivery by the city of a financing agreement, a note, and closing documents in connection therewith, making determinations as to the sufficiency of revenues and as to other matters related to the refunding project, ratifying action heretofore taken and relating to such bond, and providing other matters relating thereto.
Second.
Okay, Council, we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? And just my comments is we've seen opportunities before to help organizations save money, including the city on behalf of our citizens, allowing for a refinancing in a favorable rate environment. So this is a supporting item for moving ahead with this. And also of note, the city serves as a conduit. It is not a loan risk or repayment risk that we take on. So, Council, you've heard the motion. Any questions? And it's been seconded. Ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor. The motion is approved.
Okay, thank you, Council. And Peggy, you had an additional item?
I have two, actually.
We still have a tape for hearing.
Excuse me. I'm sorry, Peggy. I've got to do my other component, which is a second public hearing. Okay, we hereby commence a second public hearing, but this is the first public hearing. It's commonly known as a TEFRA hearing at 7:54 p.m. on April 7, 2015, regarding the proposed issuance by the city of its refunding development revenue note in the aggregate principal amount not exceeding $1.9 million for the benefit of Rocky Mountain Center for the Blind. Notice of this hearing was published in a newspaper of general circulation within the city at least 14 days prior to today. The City Council will now hear any comments concerning the project at this time. Anyone looking to step forward? Okay. The hearing is now closed at 7:54 p.m. No action is needed. Now, Peggy, I'm sorry.
Writing a note, thank you. I actually have two items. The easier one maybe first. Council all received an email from a chap on South Crocker Way about the street gutter and curb there. So I'd like to read you what I've written here. I think the issue that the gentleman raised falls under Council Goal number 2, to provide a safe community to live, work, and play, and specifically to the objective under that goal to, quote, ensure vehicular, bike, pedestrian safety, and improve accessibility. So a few days ago, I walked all the way down the cul-de-sac. It's not all that far, but I walked all the way down and all the way back up. And initially, I didn't believe there was a serious problem. But there were damaged sections of street gutter that seemed to be mainly a cosmetic problem. Then I realized, slow thinker than I am, I realized that a combination of circumstances, particularly during rush hour and when children are walking to and from school, create safety issues. Many walkers also, not living right on that street, many walkers take shortcuts to or from Windermere or to or from Lee Gulch through the cul-de-sac to Ridge Road neighborhood. Residents on that cul-de-sac might walk to and from Ridge Road to catch a bus, and children along the cul-de-sac play in front of their property, and I'm assuming some of them might walk to Ridge Road to catch a school bus. But the cul-de-sac was designed for various reasons with no sidewalk. So you can't walk on a sidewalk. Pedestrians of all ages or children playing along the cul-de-sac tend to be forced into the street gutter or up above the curb if a vehicle passes along a section of the street where a vehicle is parked on the opposite side of the street, meaning, as cars occasionally go up and down the street and you're walking on the edge of the street or whatever, and cars are parked, it gets a little crowded. So the city has estimated, I think when I walked on the street, there were about 3 cars parked at various places on the street. So somebody might have to move rather quickly, as I said, into the curb or gutter, or up onto the curb or into the gutter. And some of that gutter is definitely damaged. So the city has estimated to replace the whole curb and street gutters, the curbs and gutters, would cost probably about $53,000. But I estimate, and I meant to walk back over there today and look and didn't have time, I estimate maybe about 25% of the various sections of street gutter are actually damaged with big cracks or other things, and a few sections of curb. So my concern is a policy issue: public safety, pedestrian safety, walkability, accessibility. So I would request that council consider, if I need a motion, I will, having the city actually fix those sections of the gutter, street gutter, and very few sections of the curb that are damaged. It's my understanding that children have fallen, and there at least one older person on the street has fallen because of the condition.
Would the city manager care to comment?
Well, and I might ask Deputy City Manager Mike Broughton to jump in here as well, but we look at the city in the totality of the damage and the degradation that we have on a citywide basis, and we prioritize on that. And there are dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of locations throughout the city that require repair work. And calling out one and not doing a comprehensive repair is not the approach we're trying to take in terms of the long-term both safety and the use of limited public funds that we have. And so we have prioritized this in 2016. It is not on our list for 2015. And this is not the only location throughout the city that we have where people walk, bike, and we have kids. And my concern would be if that we start picking and choosing where we do this based upon less of a comprehensive analysis approach. We just went through had the company come out and look at the city and the sidewalk on a comprehensive basis, and we have reprioritized based on that list. This did not fall into the higher damage and danger category from number of users, both from a pedestrian count, a bike count, and a vehicular count. Certainly, if it was council's desire, we can get out there and fix it. It's on our list. We only have so many limited resources. This is part of our conversation that the mayor has asked us to put together in terms of overall priorities with everything that we want to do. And I just caution the council I don't mean this to sound derogatory at all, but picking and choosing priorities based on going out and walking it, as opposed to that comprehensive overview of the needs analysis that we had done from an outside company.
So if I could just ask, so you can comment on this too. It's one thing how many people live on the cul-de-sac, so I don't know when an analysis was done, if it all recognized how many citizens use that street who don't live on it. I mean, it's a complicated issue, and so I'm not trying to be argumentative.
No, and that ultimately is my concern, is that it is a complicated issue, and we are dealing with the totality of the city and the overall priorities. You and I could go out tomorrow and spend the morning walking, and we would have different opinions about what our overall priorities were. We have our public works staff, led right now by Mike Broughton, looking at and attempting to make in their professional experience and knowledge the overall priorities with it. We can change how we do that, but again, I caution having it be you and me making that decision as opposed to the people who work in this field and really understand what the implications. And the rationale for not taking just those parts and pieces is we've done that in the past. It doesn't hold itself together as well when you're just pulling those pieces out, and then we're back in some shorter period of time replacing what we didn't replace before. And so we've been trying to take a more comprehensive view and doing the right projects rather than kind of those quick projects. And that's not to say we can't go out there and do 3 or 4 pieces of it, but that hasn't been our approach at this time. So, Mike, I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
Yeah, and Mike Broughton, Deputy City Manager, just as City Manager Penny noted, we did the analysis for the streets. It did not incorporate the foot traffic on the road. It was strictly pavement condition and structural integrity of the street itself. So it was looking at more the vehicular impact. That subdivision itself, as you noted, doesn't have sidewalks in it.
I know that's
for whatever
my
reason,
concern.
That would be the case. The street itself is up for repaving in a 7-year plan that we have, but it's towards the end of that.
I appreciate that. I'm not asking for the street to be repaved, but most people in here know that I tripped on sidewalk and had a concussion less than a year and a half ago. So if people are having to walk in that street gutter, that's my concern, that there are safety issues involved with that. So I wasn't asking for the street to be repaved.
Sure.
And I appreciate that it's on that. I mean, there are probably streets that are 10 times worse than that street. But it's a pedestrian issue, and it's for people, many more people than one would see on that street.
Why don't we take a look at it then and come back with a recommendation of the council of
we'll do that. And
if there's a desire from
and just to echo,
the council.
I appreciate the comprehensive look because I have a number of walkways that are in between homes in our neighborhood that I don't think have ever been addressed, that are part of the city's responsibility, that see an immense amount of traffic as well.
Are they not sidewalks when you say that, or are sidewalks?
They are sidewalks for which the city has responsibility, but they've not received any attention. There's actually dirt in some instances where it was paved. So you have tremendous amounts of cracks and such. And so I would lean to the professional staff to take a comprehensive view and if there are some suggestions that they would have on an interim basis, but recognize anything that we do on an interim basis may take away from a permanent solution in other areas.
And I hear that. The other piece I didn't mention, city code requires property owners to maintain the sidewalk, but the city is responsible for the street and the street gutters. And in this case, it's a weird thing because most people who have a street gutter have a sidewalk, and when they replace the sidewalk, they get that piece of the gutter too when they do that. So it's
Absent a motion, I look for us to move forward.
okay. Well, we've asked them to do that, so I will withhold a motion at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Whoops. And then my second item. I'm really quite perplexed on how to respond to the issues that were raised earlier tonight. But we have what would seem to be a charter requirement for the citizens to vote on an issue that was raised earlier related to urban renewal. So as challenging as this is, I'm going to move, whether I get a second, that the city set a date for an election as now required by the charter on the urban renewal issue that was raised earlier this evening.
In the absence of a second, we will move forward with this evening. So we're done for this evening and look forward.
I do want to discuss that, though.
I want to discuss it as well, if I could.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it for sake of discussion then.
Okay.
Okay. What I guess I would like to hear is a
I was
legal
going to go
opinion.
to the motion first. Peggy first to comment.
What?
She made the motion. I was going to give her the opportunity to comment first.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
That's all right. I think the motion kind of speaks for itself, but so I'll yield to Jerry.
Jerry?
I would like to hear, if not tonight, soon, the legal opinion on where we stand.
So,
The comment earlier.
So I'm happy to address that right now if council would like. We did look at that modification that you considered at the last hearing extensively, and we are confident that it did not fall under the requirements of this charter provision. It was not a substantial modification under the statute, and separately, it was not a modification that triggered the requirement for an election under the new charter amendment.
Thank you. And then I have one other comment, if I may.
Yes.
Cool. And this may sound crazy to some, but not to me. What would it take to completely do away with this urban renewal stuff that we approved during this year and start over again? What would it take? Because and the reason I say that is because I think it was done with such haste, and now looking back on it, I think maybe others have seen that it wasn't maybe the wisest things to do. I think urban renewal can be used and should be used in certain situations now in Littleton, but I think the way it was presented to us and was approved, of which I'll add that I was against it the entire time, but what would it take to undo that at this point, to say, let's start over again? You have any idea what?
We probably should research that and get back to you on it.
Yeah, that I'll get back to him.
Okay, thank you.
So, council, we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Okay. Council ready to vote, and the motion is to move forward directing an election.
The vote fails with 1 yes and 6 noes.
Five noes.
Sorry, 5 noes. Councilmember Cole voted yes.
Thank you.
So for clarification, when might we expect to have an answer to Jerry's question?
It'll probably be a couple weeks, and I think it's more than just, I'd like to talk to Councilman Valdez to get some additional clarification on unraveling, because there are implications, eliminating the lift board, existing plans that are out there. So we'll have to probably run through some different scenarios and just make sure I fully understand what unraveling means for you. So a couple of weeks.
My definition would be to do it over, get rid of all of it, what we approved this past year, and start over again.
Okay. With that, Council, we are adjourned for the evening.